Hello everyone, welcome to my channel, and today we're going to be answering the question that I have so many people asking me. What is the difference between advisory and consulting? I myself have never really done advisory, but from people that I know that are in advisory, I get mixed opinions. So I'm going to really break it down into the difference and what you can expect. I spoke to a friend that was an advisor, and they said the number one advice they had for you is to know the difference between advisory and consulting. So hopefully this video helps out a lot. When it comes to advisory, they're mostly prevalent in the big four. So in this case, that's PwC, Deloitte, EY, and KPMG. So they're always the accounting big four firms, and they also have consulting or advisory wings. So something to keep in mind is that typically when it comes to advisory, at least at the big four firm, they support the risk, audit, and accounting functions of the firm. So that's why you're mostly going to see advisory at a big four firm unless they're meant to be an advisory firm. So for this reason, a lot of the things I'm going to be mentioning are specific to that kind of thing, but I'm also going to be telling you the difference between advisory and consulting because some firms actually make it a little bit different, and I'll also tell you some changes for it as well. So one thing is that I want to note that they're like the only big four firm that actually separates the two. Advisory is exactly what I'm going to be talking about today. Consulting is the way that it's normally going to be done. I want to be giving you differences throughout the video. EY actually recently revised advisory services to be consulting, so it's going to be more consulting-like. Some other companies like KPMG and PwC, that's up in the air, really depends on the functions, but in general, it's really up to what you're doing and what you're actually researching. So that's why networking is key, because no matter what, even if you're in advisory, some of the rules are actually kind of interchangeable to like consulting rules and consulting projects, and sometimes they're actually exactly the same. Definitely read up and learn about them, because from the time of this recording, so many things can change. But also when it comes to advisory and consulting, some places may have it interchangeable, some places may have it completely different. You definitely need to make sure when you apply, when you're interviewing, to make sure what is it. So when it comes to advisory, they're more focused on engagements. So typically you probably have the same client or same few clients for a long period of time. There's no real project. There's really more about here's many projects with tasks involved, and they're really requests. So this is where you're advising people, you're not really following through on an actual project. And the difference between a consulting project and advisory project is that a project is typically on a task or a goal. But when it comes to a consulting project, they're typically a solution to solve a problem. So this is very discreet because we want it to be very focused on the SOW. This SOW is going to be talking about, digital transformation, or increasing engagement when it comes to a Disney park, something like that. Very specific, and then the solution is what's going to solve it. When it comes to advisory, there are going to be a lot of things out there where it's like, can you help support this particular function? That's how it could be, and then all your requests, all your tasks will be revolving again that task. That's how it is when it comes to advisory versus consulting on a typical day. So a lot of things are going to be more on a detailed and minute basis. A lot of times projects in consulting are going to be more big picture, and a lot of times would be strategy or bigger implementations. But when it comes to advisory, they're kind of like on a day-to-day. They actually don't vary that much. They're the same almost every time, and really just supporting a lot of factors out there. So when it comes to staffing, it's also a little bit different, because when it comes to advisory, you don't get to pick. You're just kind of aligned to an industry or aligned to a particular competency, and that's all you do. When it comes to consulting, you actually get to choose what project. Sometimes it depends on your fit. You can get staffed on a completely different project or different industry. When it comes to advisory, you don't really get that flexibility. It's really just more of like supporting corporate functions. So that's something to keep in mind. Another thing about the travel is that sometimes with advisory, you actually don't travel at all. It's just mostly remote. But sometimes it could also be more about just working remotely and maybe some kind of travel here and there for training at least. But this is usually during the time when you're actually just trying to do everything remotely. And again, this is all task-based, it's not necessarily project-based like most people do. But in consulting, it's going to be a lot more travel because you're all about meeting a client And again, this is something a little bit different, is that when it comes to travel, you're kind of trying to squeeze a lot of things within a short period of time. So sometimes you just need to make it a lot more efficient when it comes to travel. When it comes to advisory, you're a long-term engagement. So you don't necessarily have to be traveling all the time because it's a long-term engagement. You can do things on deadlines and whatnot. And from what I'm seeing is that actually they sometimes work on weekday nights and weekends just to get tasks done because the client needs it. But when it comes to projects, it's really up to you in terms of how you get it done. There's still gonna be deadlines, but they're all project-based. So however you handle deadlines, however your team works with it, that's how you guys work with it. But when it comes to task-based work, you still need to do it on the go, on the spot, all the time, on time. So the least favorite thing about what my friend thought about advisory is that you're expected to work during those weekday nights and weekend, kind of like on call to help them out on these little functions that your project is on. So that's something to be careful about. And then there's also consulting where you're too much change, too much travel. Sometimes it's like basically polar differences. So I'm not saying that advisory is like, oh my God, it sucks because I'm painting a negative image on it, but it actually works for a lot of people. If you prefer to have like a more predictable schedule, a little bit more stationary, so you don't have to travel all the time, a lot of adults and families probably prefer it better too because they don't have to travel all the time and they're still getting the big name of like a consulting firm on there and also doing work for clients. The advice that I have when it comes to advisory and consulting is, like I mentioned before, do your networking, do your research, because no matter what, there's going to be a role that may be advisory, but it's consulting, or that it's consulting, but it's advisory. Do your research, and for specific roles that you want out there, reach out to people that are in those roles and actually learn about it, because my friend actually thought that she was going to go into Deloitte consulting. Instead, she got moved right into advisory, and it was not even what she wanted to do. Since day one, 2 years ago, she's been doing the same exact thing. She did not know that she was going to be doing this, but this is what happens. All of these responses are from her, and I want to also reiterate, not all of them are going to be like that. So if you, for example, like it that way, she was expecting consulting and got advisory. But if you wanted advisory and this is the thing for you, then do it. But when it comes to consulting, just make sure you don't get caught into that advisory for a lot of firms are going to be considered advisory, like specifically for risk or accounting or audit. Consulting is going to be more project based on like a lot more focus on an industry or problem. So just keep that in mind and do your research. So that's all I have when it comes to advisory versus consulting. I remember mentioning this, that I was going to do a video and specifically an interview when it came to advisory versus consulting in my live Q&A, but I never really did it. So now that I finally got her answers, I couldn't do it in an interview, but at least I had it through her answers. So this is all I had. And also, I'm going to be screen sharing right now what I saw in Fishbowl. To people who don't know what Fishbowl is, it's kind of like an anonymous forum where you can either focus on a particular fishbowl, in this case with consulting, and then you can also focus on a particular company. In my case, it's Accenture. So I actually made the same exact question asking what other people thought. And what's great is that because it's anonymous, people don't need to feel like they're going to be having repercussions around it. So here's honest feedback of what they gave us. And this is where I heard that it's not specifically when it's Deloitte, there's a difference. There's a huge difference. But when it comes to other firms, you may not get that much of difference, but it really depends on the role. So do your research. All right, that's it. And thank you so much. And let me know if you have any other questions about advisory versus consulting. If you have any questions specifically about advisory, I can ask my friends, and then that way I can give you a response too. But in general, do your research, network with people, and that's where you can get a true picture of what to expect at the firm at that time. So thank you so much, and see you guys next time. Bye.